Welcome back to another episode of the Prescription of Travel MD podcast. I'm Dr. Courtney Downes, here to encourage a love of travel and exploration and really of building a life that leaves you feeling fulfilled. And so I have a question for you today in that same vein. What if you just decided today that you were going to just do the thing? So, whatever the thing may be for you, the exact thing that you've been contemplating, you're going to just figure out how to make it happen. Well, today's guest is a wonderful example of the goodness that can come from doing just that. I just had this amazing conversation with John Taveras. He's a friend from my old Connecticut days. His wife and I are actually friends and former med school classmates. And so we went on a girls' trip over 10 years ago after residency, before my kids were born even. And, I randomly sent the same group of girls a message a year ago saying, that we should have a reunion and, get together and maybe find a cool place to go, and was really shocked when she replied that they were moving, and she told me where they were moving to. So if you know me, you're probably not surprised that my first thought was, when can we come visit? My next thoughts went to what an amazing opportunity for her and her family, who I know pretty well. And, just wondering about what their process was and what this would look like. Fast forward to after the move and, trying to convince them that they should come on the podcast and share their story, just because I know that other people will probably really benefit from hearing it. And so today, when I had the honor of actually sitting down with John to hear more about the transition. And, it's just such a beautiful take on what life can look like when you prepare yourself for anything, but also when you just decide, in spite of feeling unprepared and uncertain, and when really redefine what success looks like for you. And I thought a lot about this after we recorded the episode today. And I sat down with both John and his wife, what I call the behind the scenes, cameras not rolling, just pure and unfiltered conversation that I wish I could just bottle up and share because it's always so rich. It always leaves me with a little more direction for my own life. And I'm just so glad that I'm able to share this with so many other people. But really just getting their shared take on life and money and experiences was such a reminder that fulfillment really isn't about checking the right boxes. It's about getting clear on what actually matters, what matters to you. And, we talked a lot about redefining success, not the on paper version, not the, med school grind, the publications, the constant ladder climbing, but creating your own yardstick, and how freeing it can be when you realize that you don't actually need all of that to live a really rich life. So we also got into money. So some of you may be familiar with things like the white coat investor or, the FIRE movement, financial independence, retire early. If you're not, great places to start in terms of looking at what that could look like for you. And we talked about was how you don't have to follow every rule perfectly for it to still be powerful. I think when I initially picked up the book, I found it a little too extreme for my own personal goals, but I think it created a really good foundation for the things that I should be doing, especially since I was like a blank slate and had no idea. And, in med school, you don't learn about money and finances. It's just something that they don't really talk about. So I think having a solid financial foundation really does create options for you. Doors that you didn't even know were available will suddenly start to open. And so it's a big deal. And we talked about making big life decisions, including moving abroad and, the slower pace of life and how much less expensive things like education can be when you're outside of the United States. And, after you're done listening to the episode, there are 5 things that I want you to be thinking about when it comes to money and success and creating a life by design. Even again, if you're not thinking that you want to move abroad, but giving yourself options. So I think the biggest thing is deciding what success actually means to you. So before you go chasing another goal, checking off another box, ask yourself, if everything worked out, what would my life actually look like on the day-to-day? Not what sounds impressive, looks good on paper, but what really feels good to you. Number 2, questioning the grind. So taking a real look at what you're hustling for. What's actually still serving you, and what are you just doing because, that's the way you've always done it, or that's what you think you're supposed to do. That shift to doing something that's aligned with you can really just make all the difference in your day-to-day. Number 3, get your money working in the background. So you don't need to be extreme. Maybe you're not, again, going to go out and follow every single principle in the white coat investor. It's not ramen or bust. I'm definitely not prescribing stay at home and give up your trips and, just hustle hard. But you do need a plan, a foundation, so you're not stumbling around blindly. Automate your investing. Understand your numbers. How much do you really need to live off of? Know how you're spending your money. So I've got some great resources if you need some help with that regard, but really just building the flexibility so money stops being the thing that's keeping you stuck. It's not everything, but clearly having money makes life more comfortable And it creates this optionality, the ability to decide what you want and building optionality. So the goal, again, isn't to be the richest person in the room. It's to give yourself choices. So you can have fewer, I have to moments and more of those I get to moments. Really look at where your money is actually going. Look at your bank statements. Does it support the life that you say that you want? Like if you see what you're spending on, does that say that you want more time and more freedom and more memories, or is it saying something else? And, that's something for you to decide. Practice deciding. So if you notice yourself living in a what if mode, start small. So make the decision. This is something I'm constantly reminding myself of. It's a muscle that I'm always trying to build. I feel like sometimes it's like trying to get rid of like my belly fat so that way you can see like my abs. Like it's something, again, always working on. But I understand that clarity doesn't come before the action. It comes after. So you just have to decide and move and just know that you'll just have to figure it out. Okay. So that was my pep talk for you and for myself today. And even after this episode, if you're not immediately thinking, you should uproot your current life and move abroad, because that's not the goal and it doesn't fit with everyone's lifestyle. But it will definitely have you appreciating having the option to do so if that's what you wanted to do. So without further ado, let's get into it. So this is the Prescription to Travel MD podcast. This is the Married to Medicine edition. So thanks for tuning in today. I'm thrilled and honored for all of you to meet my next guest, who is a dear friend. And he just has such an exciting story that I've been dying to tell. And I'm just glad that he can be here with us today. So welcome to the show, John.
Thank you, Courtney. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here. It's been really awesome, reconnecting with you, and we've been texting so long, and seeing each other in person is great. So happy to be here, and hope I can be of any value and of any service to you or to your audience.
Yeah, well, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, I am a born and raised New Yorker. Lived almost all my childhood in New York, except for 2 years, where my family migrated back to the Dominican Republic, where my parents are from. So we lived there for 2 years during middle school and high school. And, that I think that's good to mention because that deep down was a small part of what drove us here, which is, um, living in Spain. So after New York, I went to Connecticut for college. That's where I met my now wife. Our mutual connection is my wife. She went to medical school with you. So in Connecticut, she did undergrad and grad school, MD, PhD. And we were there in Connecticut for about 9 years. And towards the end there, we had a long distance marriage where I moved up to Boston to do grad school. She stayed in Connecticut.
Yeah, so the Boston part. So was Boston like after? Was I already gone?
Yeah, so I moved to Boston. I think it was soon after you had finished in Connecticut.
Okay.
I was there for 2 years for business school. And then I moved to New York where I took my first job out of business school in the city. So that was our third year sort of having this long distance marriage. It was really just 100 miles away. So it was not that long distance. A year later, we converged back in New York. She did her residency in the city. I was working in the city. We started having babies. We, 5 years later, moved to the suburbs in Jersey. Uh, had a pretty nice life. We had our house, we had a nice yard, we had lovely neighbors, and our careers were really going well. Everything was good. We kind of had everything we thought we'd been working for all these years. So yeah, then fast forward to 2024, we made a sudden move to Spain, and that's what I'm here to tell you about.
You came a long way from back when I was I feel like I was, like, sleeping on your guys' couch at one point. Maybe
Yeah.
not sleeping on the couch, but I remember being there, and I remember you guys making me waffles, and I became a waffle addict after that.
Ah, yes. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so, and during that time, also in a long distance relationship, I think that was after so I stayed behind, I did an extra year at UConn to get my master's in public health, and I knew I wanted to travel and be able to have some opportunities that I wasn't going to get if I jumped right into residency. And so that meant trying to figure out where I was going to live because I knew that, Connecticut was going to be my home base because during your last year of medical school, you do have to do some internships and different rotations that are local. But I also knew that I didn't want to just be paying rent on an apartment that I wasn't intending to keep. And so I remember being there. Maybe I wasn't actually staying there. I feel like I stayed at like Ray's apartment. I was in subleasing somebody's apartment, But I just remember going over there and, like, eating waffles with you guys one day. I was like, "This is long before the kids and all the thing came along," but yeah.
Yeah, and I think you also left your car, so we were a two-car household briefly, and we got a flavor of that, and it was nice because she could go do her thing, I could do my thing, and it was like, "Oh, I don't have to drop you off and, wait for you." So, that was nice having your car, so thank you, 15 years later.
I know, it was really nice too, and I didn't have to worry about, like, my car just sitting somewhere, in the middle of Connecticut getting cold and, like, coming back and nothing being able to start. So, it all worked out. I think you were on my car insurance for, like, the longest time, and then I finally looked one day and I was like, "Oh, maybe I should take John off of my car insurance." But yeah, we had some good times there
Yeah, those are good times. Good old days before kids.
before kids, and so now you have 2 kids,
Yep.
and you decided that, "Hey, I'm going to leave this very comfortable, cozy, or at least somewhat comfortable and cozy life from in New Jersey behind and move to Spain." So, what did that look like?
That was really sudden, and it was really uncharacteristic of us. Because if you know us well, like, we don't make rash decisions, we're pretty thoughtful. We've been, kind of cookie cutter and thought well, maybe that's contradictory, but in a way, cookie cutter, we've sort of followed the track of life, go to school, get good grades, get a good job, grad school, make more money. We've done everything sort of step by step. So for us to just wake up one day and say, "Hey, we should maybe move to Europe," and, do it as quickly as we did, it's pretty irrational. So the way it happened was, like I mentioned before, deep down, I always had this idea that maybe it would be nice to take our kids to a Spanish speaking country. As a native speaker, I had not done my job to teach my kids Spanish, and that's something that my wife and I always wanted. So we always vaguely talked, had this idea that maybe we'd live abroad with our kids one day. But it was never a real thing. It was a theoretical thing that, would never really happen, but it was in our back of our minds, and she grew up outside the country too, so she also had that experience of, "Hey, there's another world out there." But, given the way that our careers and everything were going, it was never really a real thing, but it was deep down in our brains nonetheless. So, at that time, um, we were really happy where we were, but we were looking to move our kids to another school district. Our kids have been going to private school, and we just wanted more of a public education experience for them. Our town did not have the best school ratings, so we were just looking at all the towns around us. And we spent about 3 months going to open houses, the drill, right?
Going through it now.
Oh, it's the worst. And nothing was good enough for us. We loved our house, we loved our neighbors, like, we don't wanna move. And then everything was too big or too expensive or, farther from work. It's like, what are we doing? So one morning, my wife actually just woke up and had the grand idea of moving to Europe. And when she brought it up, without hesitation, I said, "Sure, let's go." Which again, like, that's not something we do.
That's very uncharacteristic for you guys, for sure.
Yes, yes. So, it was a crazy idea. I texted a few friends, one friend that had lived in Spain for a few years says, "Hey, we had this crazy idea. What do you think?" And as the day passed, it was just like, yeah, our kids are still young. And actually, our oldest was 11 then. So, you start getting to a certain age where these things become harder. So we were like, well, if we're going to do this, now is the time. It's either now or after our kids are out of school, because there's literally no other time where we could actually go. Right.
Yeah. And maybe it's not that crazy.
Yeah, exactly. Not that crazy. So, I think 2 days later, we were pretty much 99% sure we're going to do this. Then it was a marathon to figure out all the things that need to be done. And in our household, I'm the admin guy because I'm the computer guy. So, and I'm the office, I'm the office worker. She's the doctor. I'm the office worker. So I do the spreadsheets. So I put together sort of a project plan of all the 100 things we have to do between now and the summer. If we were going to move in the summer, and it was a lot of things to do: visas, housing, school, like, where to even live. We knew we wanted Spain for the language. She had never been to Spain, by the way. I had been to Spain 20 years before for a work project. So I didn't know anything. I only speak Spanish. That's the only thing I have in common. And even that is questionable because Spanish here is a little different sometimes.
Dominican, New York Spanish?
Yeah, yeah, it's quite different from Spain Spanish, but A lot of things to do, a lot of things to figure out, and we just hit the pavement. Is that the phrase?
Yeah. So how did you navigate it? What was the first thing you did? So you have this spreadsheet, you have all these things that you know you need to get together before you make this big move for yourself and for your family to a country that she's never been to before and that you've had very limited experience there. How did you even decide that I'm going to go to Spain and I'm going to stay in this area and I need to get all these things in order? And like, what do you do with your work? And like, so much to navigate. How did you handle that?
So, the first and foremost, the first thing we had to do was figure out visas because we need a legal way to get to Spain. So, did some Google researching and figured out there's probably 4 or 5 visa options out there. We narrowed it down to a couple that made sense for, what we were doing, what we planned to do, whether we were going to work or not, etc. So we narrowed it down. We reached out to a bunch of lawyers and immigration firms that sort of specialize in these visas, had 1,000 questions for them. And by the end of a few days, kind of figured out which visa we were going to go for. We found the right firm. And by the way, Facebook is the best resource for all of this. Facebook groups. There's a dozen Facebook groups that I'm part of related to Spain visas, Spain expats, Americans in Spain, all of them. So if anyone's ever interested in expatriating somewhere else, Facebook groups is an amazing resource. So that's where we found the firm that we ended up working with to get our visa. We decided pretty quickly that we were not going to do it ourselves. We're going to hire somebody, this firm, to put all the documents together and do all the hard work. Our part was just gathering everything, requesting birth certificates, new marriage certificates. Everything has to be newly issued. Uh, Ordering FBI reports, everything that Spain needed, getting them, scanning them, and emailing them to this firm. And then they took care of the rest. And for us, that was money really well spent because there were 999 other things to do in the process of moving. So that the visa part ended up being pretty smooth once we figured out what we wanted to do.
Nice. Yeah. Outsource seems to be the theme of the year. So let's keep it going.
Yeah. Then, once we figured out how we were legally going to come, that's figuring out, okay, where in Spain? Spain's a big country. It's a small country in the grand scheme of things, but, there's a lot of different, Barcelona, Madrid are the big cities, but we also know about Valencia and heard about this area called Malaga, which is where we ended up going. We wanted to be on the coast. So Madrid, that knocked Madrid off because Madrid is in the middle of the country. And then Barcelona and Valencia, which are also on the coast, they, in school, they have a second language. So you learn Spanish and you learn Catalan in Barcelona and Valenciano in Valencia. And since one of our goals was for our kids to learn Spanish, we didn't want to bog them down with a third language. So that knocked Barcelona off the list, Valencia off the list, which left Malaga, this thing we'd never heard of before. This place we never heard of before, I should say. But it turns out it's pretty wonderful. It's part of Costa del Sol, the Sun Coast, 300 days of sun. It's been pretty true. We do have rainy days, but it's probably 60 days in the year we have clouds or rain. So we ended up settling here. I made a solo trip here to Malaga to sort of figure out the situation, where to live, what schools to visit, to put our kids in. So mid-February is when we decided we were going to come. By the end of April, I booked a solo trip to come by myself without the kids to make it easier. I spent 6 days in Malaga. I averaged about 30,000 steps a day, walking around everywhere. I had set up visits with about 5 different schools, private schools. I set up meetings with real estate people just to get viewings in different parts of Malaga. Malaga is a big city with several smaller towns, and that really helped me narrow down where we'd end up. So the town that I really liked, it's turned out to be a hit. So we love it. It's small enough where we can get around easily and everything is kind of easy.
Small. Do you guys need a car to get around, or is it like you can walk to everything, or like how's public transportation there?
Our town, we can get around without public transportation. In fact, the first 6 months here were interesting. We had no car. So we had to learn the public transportation system. Turns out you get a free bus pass from the town to use certain buses, and we were up and down everywhere by bus. There is a train as well. So it's doable without a car. But with 2 kids in school who are very active with extracurricular activities and travel soccer, it's just really hard. So eventually we did have to give in and get the car.
Yeah. It's something I've been thinking about and, like, trying to figure out as we decided we were going to take a trip to Europe, so just me and the kids this summer, and I know I'd been reaching out to you because that was, like, my big motivating factor to get there, and I was like, "I'm gonna come visit you guys," and then you're like, "But it's hot," and I'm like, "Yeah, but it won't be that bad," and then you're like, "But it's really hot," and then I'm just like, "It's hot. I don't wanna drive," like, I don't do driving in mountains and areas that I'm not familiar with, not that I can't, but I just don't want to. And then I have another friend who's in Spain, but I think she's on the other side of Malaga. And so trying to figure out how I was gonna get there and get to visit both of you and then without having a car. And anyway, so we rerouted and I guess we're gonna go to Switzerland.
Yeah, that's the wrong direction, Courtney. Come on. You gotta stay.
But it's hot. I'm like, yeah, I was like, I'm gonna be inside and then my kids aren't gonna wanna go outside because it's too hot to go. So anyway, but I am gonna get there. I feel like and now that you're really selling this place to me, I might just tell Chris that we should pack up our lives and move to Spain too.
Hey, we have a playbook. We have a spreadsheet to help you to. Yeah, no, driving here is not bad actually. So actually driving here is I find it to be way better than back home. First off, we want to talk about hiccups in the process. It's been the driver's license situation. The US is one of the countries that Spain doesn't automatically recognize driver's licenses from, which means we have to start getting our license from scratch, which means we have to enroll in driving school for both the written test and the road test.
It's in Spanish?
You could also take it in English, although the road test teacher, they're not the main teachers who speak English fluently. So you can get by with some English probably, but it might be harder. But the Spanish driving test is no joke. It's not like the test that you and I probably took. This one, I estimate we spent about 120 hours each studying for the written test. Not because the questions are like hard, they're just really obscure rules that they ask about. And everybody talks about this on the Facebook groups. It's a real nightmare for people. And for a while, I was kind of refusing to take it. I've been driving for 20 years. Like, I know how to drive. I don't have to do this. I could just get by with my American license and deal with it if the cops stop me. But then I came to my senses and I decided, you know what? I'm living here. Let me just do it the right way. My wife passed the test. She's a good student, so she figured it out and passed it. And then that motivated me to just put my head down and study and pass it. And then the driving test was we had to pay for a bunch of classes. I think it ended up costing us between $1,500 to $2,000 total for driving school. Two people who've been driving for 20 plus years. So that's been the only kind of annoying hiccup in the whole move. But even that, like, there's a whole positive to the whole experience too. So it's
And now you're, like, fully immersed.
yeah. Now we see people when we hear about expats not doing it, we kind of judge them because we're like, well, you're living in another country, just kind of play by the rules. And I do believe I'm a better driver now because there are a lot of things that I kind of learned throughout the process.
Yeah, so even more reason for me not to come there and try to drive.
You'll have to use the traffic circles. We do love traffic circles here.
Yeah, I think that's like a just an outside of the US thing altogether. I know we were in Barbados and my sister still talks about this. Like we rented a car and she has to actually drive the van, this big blue van she drove. And we were like, yeah, we're going to volunteer you as tribute to drive the van. And all of these roundabouts, like everywhere you go, there are all these roundabouts. And so, yeah, I think that's just like a non US thing just altogether. So,
Yeah, I definitely come around and I appreciate roundabouts. I'm definitely team roundabout now. I prefer them over street light intersections.
oh no, they still drive me nuts, even just locally. And they're not that many, but they're enough to make me just go, ah, yes. So you guys were able to get there and get situated. You got your visas. You can drive there legally now. And I assume you found a good school for the kids and they're doing well there. And what about work for you guys? Are you working abroad or staying at home, living the best lives?
We a little bit of both. So we both quit our jobs at the time. which again, very irrational decision. We were in our early 40s, entering the peak earning times of our careers, or at least mine on the corporate side. I don't know about doctors and their salary trajectories, but yeah, we both quit our jobs. I spent the first 6 months or so not working and then eventually started back in consulting. So I've been consulting for a telemedicine company. So I am now part of your audience. I'm a health professional. I don't think you knew that, did you?
I did not know that.
See, I'm a health professional now. So here I am. Brings me to your podcast.
Yeah, very cool.
I've been consulting for a small telemedicine company in New York. They do telemedicine and in home care, which is pretty interesting. I do data and analytics, which is what I've been doing all my career. But that's a part time thing. It's very autonomous. I love it. And I'm able to sort of dictate when I work and how I work and why I work.
I was getting ready to ask you if they were hiring until you mentioned that there was, like, data and analytics, and I was like, "No, that's not my forte." I'm like, "I can do the medical part, but, I'll leave that part to you."
Although one of their doctors on the staff also lives in Spain and she does remote doctor work. I think she's our company pediatrician. So,
Oh, very cool.
there's opportunities there for telemedicine and, being an expat. And she's American and talked to her and it's really fascinating. My wife being an anesthesiologist, that's a little bit harder to do remotely, but she's happy to not be working. So it's fine. Everything's worked out.
Perfect. And how do you prepare yourself for such a move? So once you have all the logistics in place, how do you financially prepare yourself to be able to go and uproot yourselves and not have a job or at least not know what's going to happen in like the next 6 months to a year? Like what did you have to do to get to that point where you're prepared to do that?
This was preparation over the prior 20 years. I've always been frugal, so that's sort of a baseline thing. I've always known how to live below my means, and early on, I started reading financial books, financial management books pretty early on. So I've always had this vague idea of optionality throughout my career, especially after business school, and especially once the kids started coming. I knew that I loved working, I really do, but I also want the option to just stop whenever I feel like it. So there's this whole online FIRE movement. I'm sure you've heard of it, financial independence entirely. I don't fully buy into everything that's online there because some people there live pretty extreme, boring lives to reach FIRE. But I knew that if we as a family could consistently live below our means, save and invest, and be smart, then we'd have that option. So part of the reason I said yes to moving to Spain right away was because I knew we could do it. I don't have to look at the numbers. We barely looked at numbers. I just knew that we could swing it for as long as we wanted to. I don't take it for granted. I'm very fortunate, but it's also been part of the plan all along.
Yeah. Well, I love your strategy and I love that you guys were able to make such an amazing move for yourself and for your family. So, what does life look like for you guys now? You're not 9 to 5 working, day to day, driving into the city if you have to. Like, what does it look like for you now?
You'd be maybe surprised to hear that a whole chunk of our life is still looks a lot like our old life. Specifically the part about having kids. You still have to wake up early, you still have to make breakfast and get them ready for school and argue about, what they're wearing and whatever. That hasn't changed, that whole, having a kid and having active kids where after school, come home, have some lunch, do homework. And then I take my job as an Uber driver and drive them around town for their different activities. That is still very much part of our life, daily life. But what's changed is everything in between. Once they go to school until the time they come out of school, that time is completely free. We can do whatever we want and spend our days however we want. And that's been just the beauty that we've discovered is this whole life where you could actually live and not center your life around work. So what we've done, she's picked up a bunch of hobbies. Currently, she's into ceramics. She does a weekly ceramics class. She started sewing recently, so doing a lot of creative manual projects. I've always played sports. Right now, my sport of choice is table tennis, ping pong. I have a small group of really good friends. We get together once or twice a week. We play. I never watched Forrest Gump. Don't give me any movie references. Back to medicine, I did watch, I do watch.
You haven't seen Forrest Gump? Oh gosh, now I have to send you the clip at least of him playing, like, table tennis.
Yeah, I probably should look it up. I don't know if I play like him, but I do have a lot of fun, and I'm pretty intense the way we play. So it's a real full body workout, and we do that after the gym. So three of us, three guys, we go to the gym and we play 2 hours of ping pong. So we do that once or twice a week.
Is pickleball a thing there?
It's not as big as I wanted. That was my jam back in the States.
Okay.
But here I have to drive 15 minutes away to go pickleball, whereas here I could 5 minute bike ride to ping pong. It's like no competition there. So yeah, just complete freedom to do what we want for the day. It took a little bit of took us a little while to sort of get used to that idea, right? Like we're so used to having this regimen. And I do think we went through a period, maybe a few months of, I don't want to call it identity crisis at all, because I think that sounds a lot worse than it was. It was just like, man, what the hell do we do now? Kids are in school. I don't have work to do. What do I do?
Well, I'm glad you figured it out.
Yeah. We pretty quickly figured it out. And we're lucky to live a 5 minute drive to the beach or 30-minute walk. So once a week for some time, we were going on long walks on the beach and doing that kind of cliche thing. But yeah, our days are pretty free. And the only obligation I have is the consulting work that I do, which I squeeze in whenever I can so that, whenever the kids are sleeping or in school, I'll do a little work. I try to not do it while they're around and awake. That's been a blessing, just being very flexible and autonomous.
Well, I think you're definitely living the dream that many of us here aspire to. And it's interesting that you brought up the identity crisis situation, even though, again, not necessarily an identity crisis, but like this moment in time where you're just like, now I have what I thought I wanted, and then what next? And I know I've been in a bunch of different groups and I've heard that sentiment expressed many times where you have a doc who's been working for so long, and they finally reached a point where they are financially independent. They can, they have free time and they can go out and do whatever they like. And then they get there. I don't want to say bored, but there's a point where it's like, okay, what next? What do I do with myself? I want to be there. I aspire to be there, but it's interesting that you reached that point and then you were able to kind of get yourself out of it and continue to stay in Spain, I imagine.
Yeah, well, it was initially supposed to be a 2 year excursion and see what happens. We are hitting
How long has it been?
it's a year and a half, and we're not leaving in 6 months for sure. So I think at this point it's a minimum of 3 year thing, but really TBD. Our guiding principle is the kids, as long as they are thriving and doing well and happy, especially with our oldest approaching college age in 4 or 5 years, which is mind blowing. We want to make sure that he is set up for all the optionality. I like that. I mentioned the word before, and I really like the word optionality. The option of going to college in Europe not once crossed my mind in my life until we moved here. Now we're like, well, he can go back to the US. He wants to go back to California. He wants to go to California for whatever reason, but he could also go to Amsterdam, which he loved. He'd go to Germany. He'd been learning German in school. He'd go to London. We could do so many, even here in Spain, there's English speaking universities. So I think for us,
And it's probably a lot cheaper.
it's not even a joke how much cheaper it is. So it's been an eye opening experience for that reason because, like I said, we never considered it. And I do still consider having that US passport, that US citizenship, to be such an asset that, we can go to school here and then go work in the US with no problem, right?
Right.
America still is the best place in the world to make money and pull yourself out of jump at socioeconomic levels. So we want them to have that option. But if they also rather have more European lifestyle, we want them to have that option as well. So I think we're just here building optionality for them. That's kind of the game right now. See how long we have to be here to give them those options.
And was there ever any intention to return to the US, both you and your wife, to like work, or was it always the goal that this is kind of where we're at and we don't really have any plans to go back to living in the States?
It's really been a TBD, see how we're feeling. We kept the house. We still have the house back home. So we, in theory, We still have a place to go. I mean, it's being rented, but eventually we do plan to go, but it really is TBD depending on life and how things are going.
I was thinking of it from the standpoint of, like, as a physician, you always, or at least in my mind, and I know you can't speak for her, but when you leave behind medicine, you always worry about your licensing and your credentials, especially when you're in a procedure-oriented specialty. And I know that fear keeps a lot of us in place because we know, like, if we leave, there are all these hoops that you have to jump through to get back. You can't speak for her, so I don't know if it was ever her intention to return to medicine or if that was something that ever crossed her mind or your mind or.
Yeah, it has been on her mind and that has been her intention. She planned to do locum and that hasn't really happened because turns out that the logistics of going back and forth are not that attractive. So, like I said, she's been continuing and doing the CMEs and continuing what she has to continue to keep things active, but we have the option to not, and that's we'll just kind of keep living that and see how it goes.
Yeah, and I think when you have the option, that completely changes your perspective because you know that, like, yeah, I'm gonna keep these things active and I can do these things if I want to, but I don't have to. Like right now, I feel like I have to go to work. Like there's no way that I could just stop working, and I shouldn't say that because it's a thought that I have, but it's not necessarily a fact. So like, yeah, you could make it happen, but I also don't feel like we have the setup at this point in our lives to be able to do that. But if I did, I feel like it would make it much easier to just know that, okay, if I just keep the baseline credentials active, I know that I can go back into an alternative, like, route to get to medicine. And I think it's also important to highlight that even if you don't have all those things, there are all these other avenues within medicine that you can pursue that don't require you like staying active. And I say this as an emergency medicine doc who deals with this all the time in terms of realizing that I need to have a certain number of innovations, I need to have a certain number of procedures to keep my credentials active. And I think that fear kind of keeps me from doing other things, to jumping out and going beyond like you guys have done. So kudos to you for actually making that happen. And I think it's inspiring. I think there are other people who are gonna hear this who may be sitting in, a similar situation where they don't want to live this, like, fast life that's just watching life pass them by. They wanna be somewhere where they can live this slow life and they can have time for family and activities and do things that go beyond just going to work every day. And maybe they're feeling hindered by not having their finances in place. So maybe this is inspiration to get your finances in place. It's great that you guys have been doing this for so long, and I know you guys have very, like, by the book, let's get it done. But if you haven't started, it's not too late to start now. Like, you can start working on your finances and getting your ducks in a row, so that way you can create a life like this.
Definitely. I mean, if you hear any financial guru online, they'll all say that the best time to get your finance stuff together was 20 years ago. The next best time is today. So start today. I think there's also a lot of built in assumptions and built in default paths that we all automatically take, especially anyone in the medical field. Like my wife knew that she was going to be a doctor since she was like 13. It's been her life, right? That was her life path. Now, with the privilege of stepping away and looking back, it's obvious how we make so many decisions based on that fear. And I would challenge that. I would challenge that fear and realize that life is short. I mean, life could be long too, but you kind of have to make your decisions and know what you want and start finding ways to pursue it, to like build it into your current life. One really trivial example that comes to mind is I always knew once we had kids, I always knew that I wanted to be there every night for dinner. Just a silly little thing, right? That's in my head. I don't know why. I just figured it would be good for my kids to see me every day. In order to accomplish that, I had to be home from work on time, early. I had to travel as little as possible. And there were a lot of times in my career, especially once the kids came, that I said no to a lot of travel opportunities. In corporate, especially as we move into leadership, everybody wants to always be traveling, right? Be on the road constantly. And I said no to a lot of things. So I made a lot of decisions on purpose that were suboptimal from a career standpoint, but I knew that I wanted for myself. So I just said no. Like, I'm a great employee. I'll get my shit done and be the best person that you'll ever hire, but I don't need to go to California. I don't need to go to CES, which is a really cool, sexy thing to do every year in January. I don't need to do those things. I'd rather be home and not travel. So
You didn't wanna come to Vegas?
I did it. Not for that. Other little things, like you mentioned pickleball before. I started playing pickleball before it was cool, and there was a little court around my house, and I got, caught wind of it, and I started playing. I would just work from home before working from home was cool, and on a Tuesday morning, I would just go to the pickleball court and play. I didn't ask for permission. Granted, corporate can't really do that as a practicing physician. It's a little harder, but that was my version of something that I knew that would be really, really valuable for my life, maybe suboptimal for my career, for me to be, not in the office having FaceTime with everybody and instead playing pickleball for 3 hours on a Tuesday morning. I knew that that's what I wanted, and I found a way to build it into my life then so that later in life, i.e., now, when we made this big decision, it wasn't that big of a leap to make a suboptimal career decision, knowing that there's something better that I could do, instead of we could easily just keep on making money and living in beautiful suburban house in Jersey, but I knew that there's a better opportunity out there. I think those little micro decisions of things that you can apply to your life today could help sort of train your brain to make these big life changing decisions that might be suboptimal financially or career wise, but really optimal for everything else.
Oh, and I love that you know what you want, and I love that you know who you are and who you're not, and that you've used that as a guiding light to get to where you're at right now with you and your family, and I think that you're setting a wonderful example for your sons of what they can be and what's possible. Yeah, so keep doing that. Keep up the good work. Stay in Spain a little bit longer so I can come and visit.
All right. Brian, I guess we'll stay here. Courtney has to come.
You have to tell us about some of the really good spots to go to when we get there.
Yeah, sounds good. I'll be here for that.
Yes. I do have to ask because I know it's different when you're in the US versus when you're outside of the US in terms of getting credit cards, but are you guys using credit cards for any of your, like, travel expenses or
For everything. I've been a loyal Capital One Venture customer for so long. I put everything through that tuition. Love it. I love paying tuition on it. I'm just waiting for Capital One to tell me to stop, to like come back home and stop spending my money outside. But I assume it's fine. I assume they won't stop me.
you need to get yourself an Atmos card, the Alaska card.
Alaska card.
Yeah, because they earn three times back on, like, all of your international purchases, and so if you're, like, "I just want 1 card in my wallet" person, then you could be instead of getting 2 times back on that tuition, you could get earning 3 times back.
Oh, that's interesting. I've never wanted to, and I know this is like your whole area, and I texted with you jokingly the other day, like, I've always been pretty simple about my credit card game. I had the Sapphire Preferred 10 years ago, and we just didn't travel enough to, like, make it really worthwhile. But I really liked the simplicity of Capital One Venture Card and the fact that I could just go in and erase transactions. That's such a great feeling, but I'm always down to make a little extra if it's simple. I don't wanna complexify my life.
Well, and that's why I sent because I could send you down a whole complicated, rabbit hole, but I'm like, it's 1 car, again, it's earning 3 times back on everything. I would have to check and see if there's a cap, but if you're just gonna be using that 1 card anyway, that's, like, something you could be, swiping all the time and earning even more rewards for, and it's somewhat simple. It can get a little complex, but you're the tech guy, you're the analytical guy, you could figure all those things out, like, easily.
I have enough things to keep me busy. I don't wanna yeah, anyways, yes.
Fair enough.
But I will follow up with you on this card. I'm not down for it.
Yeah, we have to chat. Well, I love that you were able to come on the show today and share a little bit about your life now, what it looks like in Spain, after living here in the US for quite a bit of time. I think, again, people are really going to be interested in hearing more about you. You have a blog. I don't know if you want to share that information as well.
I've actually been really bad with the blog. I thought I would be writing a lot more. I only wrote 2 posts since I've been here, so I could skip that part. I did write a book 10 years ago. I'm actually trying to write the 10-year anniversary edition, update it, but it's out there, are for Excel users. I had started working on my second book, but ping pong and gym and beaches keep calling me, so I've been a little slacking on that.
Yeah. So sad.
I know.
So I imagine if you had to do this all over again, you would still say yes to moving to Spain. Are there other countries that you would consider moving to or that are potentially on your radar?
Yeah, we talk about that all the time because now suddenly it's like we've unlocked this superpower that we didn't know we had, which is to, live in other places. We don't have to live in expensive New Jersey suburbs. We've talked about Southeast Asia, although that's just really far from everything we know, so we don't know about that. Definitely have talked about the Dominican Republic since I have ties there, and Jamaica since my wife has ties there, and Portugal since we made a road trip last summer and loved it. So we're all over the place, but definitely for at least one more year, if not 3 or 4 more years, we'll be here.
Well, I'm looking forward to hearing more from where you guys go and probably following you along. I may still make a detour and stop by and visit. We'll see how that goes.
All right, sounds good.
All right. Thanks again for being on the show, John.
Thank you, Courtney.
Thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you next time.